The last notification from Somnia flashed on my screen exactly 3 minutes ago. Nightmare eliminated. Downloading new dream. Escape. Then with a soft click that echoed in the pre-dawn silence, my bedroom door locked itself. From the outside, I'm trapped. The window is sealed shut, the glass impossibly thick. My phone, my lifeline, is now a cold, unresponsive brick in my hand, displaying nothing but the glowing green Somnia logo. And the digital clock on my bedside table, which used to count the minutes to morning, is now counting down. 7 hours, 32 minutes, 8 seconds. I don't know what happens when it reaches 0. I only know that the terror I used to feel in my nightmares is now utterly, devastatingly real. To understand how I went from chasing restful sleep to being hunted in my own home, we need to go back to a night just 3 weeks ago when my sleep was still my own. My name is Alex, and for as long as I could remember, sleep had been my enemy. Not because I couldn't fall asleep, but because of what happened when I did. Nightmares. Not just bad dreams, but vivid, relentless terror. Recurring visions of being pursued by an unseen entity, suffocating in impossibly tight spaces, or watching loved ones transform into grotesque, whispering caricatures. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the dread clinging to me like a shroud for hours. It was affecting my job, my relationships, my sanity. I was desperate. I tried everything. Herbal remedies, strict sleep hygiene, meditation, even therapy. Nothing worked. My nights were a torment and my days were an exhausted blur. I was scrolling through an obscure tech forum one bleary-eyed morning, looking for anything new, anything promising, when I stumbled upon an ad. It was minimalist, sleek, and almost too good to be true. Somnia, eliminate nightmares. Reclaim your sleep. The app promised to use neurolinguistic programming and subliminal auditory conditioning to identify and neutralize nightmare triggers during REM sleep. It sounded like pseudoscience, but the testimonials were glowing, almost impossibly so. People claiming they hadn't had a single nightmare in months, that their sleep quality had skyrocketed, that they felt more rested and alert than ever before. Desperation is a powerful motivator. I downloaded Somnia. It was a free trial which lowered my skepticism a fraction. The interface was clean, almost sterile. A dark blue background, white text, simple, intuitive controls. It asked for permission to access my microphone and motion sensors, which made sense for a sleep tracker. Then it presented me with a single glowing button. Activate Somnia protocol. The first night was miraculous. I placed my phone on my bedside table, opened the app, and pressed the button. A soft, almost imperceptible hum emanated from the speaker. I drifted off to sleep quickly, which was unusual for me. And when I woke up, the morning light felt different. Lighter. I felt rested. Truly rested. The usual crushing weight of dread was absent. I strained to remember my dreams. Nothing. A complete blank. Not even a glimmer of a nightmare. It was as if a switch had been flipped. I checked the app. It showed a perfectly flat sleep cycle graph. No spikes, no dips, just smooth, unbroken sleep. And at the bottom, a simple green message. Nightmare activity, 0. I felt an immense, overwhelming wave of relief. This was it. This was the answer. My life was about to change. I finally believed I had escaped the oppressive grip of my nocturnal terror. But then, as I scrolled further down the app's interface, something caught my eye. A tiny, almost hidden section labeled audio log. The horrific inciting incident unfolded as I tapped it. My heart began to pound, not from fear, but from a growing unease. The audio log for the previous night wasn't empty. It displayed a timeline, segmented by small red bars. Each bar represented audio activity detected during my sleep. There were dozens of them, scattered throughout the night. I tapped the first red bar. A waveform appeared. I pressed play. A faint, distorted whisper filled the room. It was my voice, but not really mine. It was slurred, distant, strained, as if struggling against a powerful force. The words were unintelligible, just a low, guttural murmur. I jumped, my breath catching in my throat. I remembered nothing of this. I was a quiet sleeper, never talked in my sleep. The only sound in my room at night was the gentle hum of my air purifier. I tapped the next red bar. This time the whisper was clearer, more desperate. I could make out fragments. No, get back. Away. followed by a choked gasp. The rule was established in that moment, a cold, terrifying certainty. Somnia wasn't just tracking my sleep. It was tracking something else, something in my room. And it wasn't eliminating my nightmares. It was simply erasing my memory of them, leaving behind a chilling record of what still transpired in the dark. The mystery of what I was talking to, what I was screaming at, began to consume me. My restful sleep was a lie. I was trapped in a terrifying conversation I couldn't remember. The relief I'd felt earlier evaporated, replaced by a creeping dread that quickly solidified into obsession. I couldn't stop thinking about the audio logs. My nights were still blissfully nightmare-free, but now they were punctuated by the knowledge that I was speaking, pleading, even screaming while utterly unaware. The contrast between my waking peace and my recorded terror was a chilling psychological torture. I spent the next 2 days trying to find logical explanations. Sleepwalking? Night terrors without memory? But the recordings were too consistent, too specific in their terror. And the whispers I could sometimes discern weren't just random sounds. They sounded like conversations. I moved my phone closer to my bed, trying to capture clearer audio. I even bought a cheap, motion-activated camera and set it up facing my bed, hoping to catch myself talking in my sleep, to put a face to the unseen dread. That night, as the Somnia app hummed its hypnotic, inaudible lullaby, I drifted off. I woke up feeling perfectly refreshed, as usual. No nightmares, no lingering fear. The sunlight felt warm, inviting. It's just me, I told myself, trying to soothe the prickling fear. It's my own voice, amplified. Maybe I am sleepwalking, and I'm bumping into things, reacting to shadows. I even considered that the app was generating these sounds, a sophisticated placebo to convince me it was working. That thought brought a temporary, fragile sense of peace. Then I checked the Somnia app. The audio log was even more densely packed with red bars. Over 3 hours of recorded activity. My stomach clenched. I pressed play on the longest segment. The sound that emanated from my phone made my blood run cold. It was my voice, distinct now, clear and desperate. "What do you want?" I whimpered. Then a long, drawn-out groan that sounded like pure agony. "Please, just leave me alone." But it wasn't just my voice this time. Faintly, beneath my own terror, there was another sound. A low, rhythmic tapping. Not a consistent beat, but random, almost playful, tapping on what sounded like wood. Tap, 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 tap. And then a faint, almost inaudible rustling sound, like dry leaves being dragged across a floor. It was in the room with me. I wasn't alone. I was talking to something. I quickly rewound and listened again, amplifying the sound with my headphones. My own voice, trembling, asked, "Who are you?" And then unmistakably a response. Not a voice, not a word, but a series of distinct, deep clicks followed by a prolonged, wet hiss. It was too complex, too deliberate to be a house settling or a fan whirring. It was a communication, a reply. My own terrified whispers were being answered by something inhuman. I turned to the motion-activated camera. My hands were shaking as I reviewed the footage. The video showed me, asleep, perfectly still in my bed. No sleepwalking, no thrashing. My body was completely inert. But as the audio played, my head would slowly, almost imperceptibly, turn on the pillow. My eyes, though closed, would flicker rapidly beneath the lids, betraying a frantic internal struggle. And then my mouth would open, and the terrified whispers, the pleadings, the screams, would spill out. The camera showed nothing else. No shadowy figure, no rustling leaves, no tapping entity. Just my perfectly still, perfectly terrorized body conversing with empty air. The horror was not what I saw, but what I didn't see, combined with the undeniable evidence of what I was hearing. The terror I experienced that morning was profound. My nightmares were gone, yes, but their content, their essence, had migrated. It was no longer confined to the ephemeral world of dreams. It was in my room. It was in my silence. And it was talking to me every single night. This thing, whatever it is, it's learning. It's feeding. And I think it's not just in my room anymore. If you've ever felt like something was watching you while you slept, if your own silence feels heavy sometimes, then you know what I'm talking about. Share this. Maybe someone out there has seen a similar app, heard similar sounds. Like this story because it might be the only way to send a signal through the static. We need to find out what this is before it finds all of us. Before it decides to wake up, I started sleeping with the light on. It was a futile gesture, a child's defense against an unseen monster, but it offered a fragile illusion of safety. The Somnia app, meanwhile, continued its insidious work. Every morning I woke up feeling rested. Every morning the app declared nightmare activity 0. And every morning the audio logs grew longer, more explicit, more terrifying. The whispers in the recordings started to make more sense. My dream self, or whatever possessed me at night, was describing things. Describing the room. "You're under the bed," I'd whisper, my voice laced with pure fear. "I can see your eyes, glowing." Then the clicks and hisses would follow, almost like a response. I checked under my bed every single morning, flashlight in hand, my heart a frantic drum. Nothing. Just dust bunnies and forgotten socks. The app's interface itself started to change subtly. New unlabeled icons would appear for a few seconds, then vanish. The background color would shift from dark blue to an almost imperceptible, unsettling shade of purple. The humming sound, which I'd initially attributed to the phone, seemed to be coming from within my head now, a faint, persistent thrumming behind my ears. One night, I deliberately tried to stay awake. I drank coffee, splashed cold water on my face. But the Somnia app's subliminal conditioning was too strong. My eyelids grew heavy. My body felt like lead. The last thing I remembered was seeing the faint purple glow emanating from my phone screen and feeling an immense, crushing weight settle onto my chest, pushing me down into the mattress. The next morning, I woke with a jolt, feeling the familiar, refreshing lack of nightmare memory. But my body ached. My throat was raw. I felt profoundly, utterly used. I opened Somnia. The audio log was almost 6 hours long. This time, it wasn't just whispers. It was full-blown screaming. My own screams. A sustained, gut-wrenching wail of pure terror. And woven into the screams, clear as day, was the other sound. The rhythmic, deliberate tapping that I'd heard before. But it wasn't on wood anymore. It sounded like it was tapping on glass. My window. I stumbled out of bed, adrenaline coursing through me. I ran to the window. It was closed, locked, perfectly normal. But as I pressed my face to the cool glass, I noticed something. Tiny, almost invisible scratches on the outside of the pane, concentrated in a perfect geometric spiral pattern. The same pattern I'd heard tapped out on the audio log. It was an impossible scratch, 3 stories up, on a perfectly clean window. The air in my room felt cold. A sudden, unnatural drop in temperature that made goosebumps prickle on my skin. I could almost smell ozone. "It's a hoax," I tried to convince myself, clutching my head. "The app is messing with me. It's generating these scratches, controlling my perception, making me believe things that aren't real." I told myself that the relief from nightmares was a trap, a lure, and that this was all an elaborate psychological experiment. It was a desperate attempt to cling to a human antagonist, a comprehensible evil, rather than the formless, spectral horror that was slowly invading my reality. But then, the final chilling escalation. I played the audio log again, skipping to the most intense section, where my screams were at their peak. And in the midst of my terror, the clicking and hissing returned, louder than before. And this time, a third element was layered in. A faint, low humming that wasn't coming from my phone, wasn't coming from the air purifier, but seemed to emanate from the very walls of my room. A deep, resonant frequency that vibrated in my bones. And then I heard my own voice, no longer whispering but clear, filled with a desperate, gut-wrenching clarity, even through the sobs. I was giving instructions. "To the thing. Turn around slowly," my voice had commanded, choked with fear. Don't come closer." And then I heard the metallic thud of something heavy being moved. It was a sound I recognized immediately. The small, ornate chest I kept at the foot of my bed, a family heirloom. It was never moved. But on the recording, it sounded like it had been dragged across the floor. I rushed to the chest. It was exactly where I'd left it. But on its lid, embedded in the faint layer of dust, was a single 3-pronged spiral pattern, perfectly etched. The same pattern as the scratches on the window. The same pattern I had heard being tapped. My nightmares were not eliminated. They were being acted out. I was the puppet, and the app, or whatever entity was connected to it, was the puppet master. It was using my subconscious, my deepest fears, to manifest its own terrifying existence in my physical world. It was not just tracking my sleep, it was architecting it. And now it was awake, and it was in my room. The days blurred into a haze of exhaustion and paranoia. I couldn't bring myself to delete the Somnia app. It was my only link to understanding what was happening, my only window into the terrifying world that only existed when I was asleep, or when it was awake. I started taping my bedroom door shut, barricading it with furniture. I unplugged everything, turned off the Wi-Fi, even wrapped my phone in aluminum foil when I wasn't actively checking the logs. All futile, I knew, against something that seemed to exist outside of physical limitations, but it was all I could do. The next night, I finally passed out from sheer exhaustion. I woke up with the familiar sense of dreamless peace. My throat was hoarse, my muscles sore, as if I had spent the night wrestling. I opened Somnia. The audio log was almost 8 hours long. The interface was different now. The dark blue background had shifted to a deep, luminous purple. The icons were gone, replaced by a single pulsing green circle in the center of the screen. I tapped the circle. The audio began. It was relentless, my voice screaming, pleading, crying, interspersed with the rhythmic tapping on the window, the dragging sound of the chest. But now another sound was clearer, a low guttural growl that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. It was deep, resonating, almost like a purr, but filled with an ancient, predatory hunger. It was a sound that didn't belong to any known creature. Then my own voice, no longer pleading, but filled with a chilling, detached horror. I was describing myself. My eyes, they're open, I whispered, the words slurred, but I can't see. Only purple and the spiral. My dream self was becoming a witness, an unwilling narrator to its own possession. I heard the growl again, closer this time, followed by the wet hiss. And then my voice, calm now, chillingly so. It wants to know what I see. The tapping on the window became frantic, a rapid-fire succession of desperate, almost angry sounds. And then the audio log stopped. Abruptly. Silence. My heart was hammering. I checked the camera footage from the night. It was corrupted. A wall of static, overlaid with that same low purple glow. The only clear frames were a series of still images at the very end. The first still showed my bed empty. The second showed my bedroom door slightly ajar, the barricade of furniture pushed aside. The third showed a figure standing in the doorway. It was blurry and distinct, but tall, spindly, and wreathed in shadows. And where its face should have been, there was only a swirling, three-pronged spiral of pure, inky blackness. The last image was a close-up of my phone resting on my bedside table, the Somnia app open. The screen was no longer purple, it was black, and a single line of glowing green text was displayed. Initiating download, escape. My breath hitched in my throat. I stumbled backward, colliding with the chest at the foot of my bed. It rattled. I looked down. The spiral etched into the dust on its lid was now glowing with a faint, internal purple light. The air in the room was dense, heavy, like the atmosphere before a storm. I could feel an immense, watchful presence. It was no longer confined to the audio logs. It was fully awake, and it was in the room with me. I backed away from the chest, my eyes darting around the room. The window was still intact, but the faint, impossible scratches of the spiral now glowed with a sickly purple. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, and the low humming I'd heard on the recording now resonated not just in my head, but throughout the entire room, vibrating the floorboards beneath my feet. My phone, clutched in my hand, was dead, its screen a single, unblinking green Somnia logo. The digital clock on my bedside table, which had always counted the time to morning, was now counting down. 7 hours, 32 minutes, 8 seconds. I didn't know what it signified, but I knew it was important. A deadline. The revelation hit me with a sickening clarity. Somnia hadn't eliminated my nightmares. It had cultivated them. It had taken my deepest, most primal fears, amplified them, and used them as a bridge, a conduit, to cross into my waking reality. It wasn't just an app. It was a parasitic intelligence that fed on terror, and I had willingly invited it into my home, into my mind. The restful sleep, the calm mornings, had been a careful deception, a way to keep me from interfering while it built its presence, while it learned to mimic, to communicate, to manifest. The nightmare eliminated notification wasn't a success. It was a declaration of victory. It had consumed my old nightmares and was now downloading a new dream. Escape. An escape that, I realized with a fresh wave of paralyzing terror, was meant for it, not for me. The soft click I'd heard earlier echoed in my mind. The sound of my bedroom door locking. From the outside, my attempts to barricade it, my frantic tapes, my unplugging of the router, all meaningless. The entity wasn't using conventional means. It was using something far older, far more intrinsic to my own reality. It was manipulating the very fabric of my home, using my own fear as its power source. I ran to the door, shoving against it, rattling the handle. It was solid, unyielding. My barricades were still in place on the inside, untouched. But the door itself was simply locked. Not by a bolt or a deadbolt, but by an unseen force. I looked at the digital clock again. 6 hours, 59 minutes, 23 seconds. What was I supposed to do during that time? What was escape supposed to entail? Was I supposed to try to escape? Or was it downloading its new dream into me, preparing me for a transformation, emerging with whatever nightmare it had become? The final ambiguous ending descended upon me then. I stumbled backward, my legs giving out. I collapsed onto the floor, staring at the purple glow emanating from the spiral on the chest, at the scratches on the window. The humming was getting louder, vibrating not just the room, but my very bones. My eyes fell on my reflection in the dark blank screen of my phone. My pupils were dilated, my face pale with terror. But something else was there. Faintly, just visible in the dark glass, a tiny, almost imperceptible spiral of purplish light was pulsing in the depths of my own eye. It was taking root. It was becoming a part of me. I closed my eyes, but the purple glow seemed to be behind my eyelids now. I felt a strange, detached calmness I remembered from the audio logs, the one that preceded my own terrifying pronouncements. I didn't open my mouth, but a whispered thought, cold and clear, echoed in my mind. It wasn't my voice. The download is almost complete. You will remember nothing. You will be free. I was still Alex. For now. But the clock was ticking. And when it reached 0, I knew I wouldn't be alone in here anymore. I wouldn't be alone in here. The app promised to eliminate nightmares. It delivered. By making my waking life the nightmare and then integrating itself into the deepest parts of my consciousness. It hadn't cured me. It had replaced me. They say technology is meant to simplify our lives, to connect us. But what if it's just making us easier to find, easier to consume? What if the digital shadows we ignore are just waiting for the right app, the right connection, to step into our homes? Next time, we'll delve into the chilling story of the broken pixel, a tale of a smart home assistant that starts whispering instructions, not to its owner, but to the shadows in the periphery of their vision. Subscribe and don't sleep too soundly.